The 6-star Tauros raid can be pretty challenging, but it's not one of the most technical raids to beat. The problems we have to deal with in this raid are pretty simple, though it's not the easiest raid out there. It doesn't really have any glaring weaknesses, though it does have one weakness that we're going to exploit thoroughly. Now, it is going to hit you with big water-type damage, so having a water-type resistance is going to be really important here. Pokemon like Bellibolt get one shot with crits, so if you want something that's 100% that is safe to work, you're going to want to avoid Pokemon that do not resist it, though I'm pretty sure Iron Hands does well here. You're also going to have to take into consideration that close combat's out there. That is actually what we're going to be taking advantage of. Every time it uses close combat, it debuffs its own defensive stats for you, and in most of our builds today, we're going to be baiting close combat, which is going to increase our damage, making this raid much easier. It is going to use bulk up later in the raid. By the time we get there, our damage and our healing is going to be boosted to the point where that's not going to matter. At 50%, it is going to clean itself, and at 60% time, the player is going to get cleaned. We do have a variety of strategies to use that are going to do different things. Sometimes that'll come into play, sometimes it won't. Tauros-aqua does get a ability Anger Point, but I have raided all three of the Tauros many times, and I've never seen the 6-star raid with Anger Point as an ability. It always has the ability Chew. Though I cannot confirm this with a lot of data, I just can confirm this with a lot of experience beating and catching these 6-star Tauros that always have Chew, which is actually what makes this 6-star raid a little easier than the 5-star Tauros, in my opinion, because the 5-star Tauros is much more likely to have Anger Point, which can be an absolute nightmare to deal with, but we won't have to deal with that in this raid. We're going to be using 3 different ways to take out the 6-star Tauros-aqua. The best one of them is going to be Slowbro, without a doubt, and then to cover the types that Psychic doesn't hit well, we're going to be using Dondozo and Venusaur. I'm using Venusaur just because I got it to work with resisted damage, which means it's going to be pretty damn good, and its dual typing of grass and poison is really good for this raid. If you want to go with the stellar type, it's good. I think there's a chance that the grass type is actually better just because it baits close combat, which means it's going to debuff its own stats. Venusaur's turn order is going to be very simple. I like the Venusaur because since I got it to work pretty well against resisted damage, it goes to show that this stellar type Venusaur with grass type damage can beat any type Tauros-aqua that you run into. And I proved it in the uncut raid, which will be shown in the end screen. But anyways, you're going to charm at the beginning of the raid. This is just going to make it a little safer to get your acid sprays off. Then you're going to go ahead and get 2 acid sprays. You only really need 2 because, like I said, Tauros likes to use close combat. It'll debuff its own stats the rest of the way for you. After that, you're going to spam Giga Drain until you can Terastallize. Then you're going to Terastallize and continue spamming Giga Drain until Tauros cleans itself at 50% HP, at which point you're going to set up another 2 acid sprays and go right back to turbo spamming Giga Drain until the raid is over. With Dondozo, we're not going to need to do a lot of stat boosting because Dondozo resists the water moves. It's not going to get hit by a headbutt, and it is going to bait close combat, which means that Tauros is going to debuff its own stats for you pretty quickly. So what we're going to be doing is just spamming Liquidation until you can Terastallize, then go ahead and Terastallize as soon as you can. Continue spamming Liquidation, and then Tauros is going to clean you of your stats at 60% time, at which point you will go ahead and do 2 curses. That'll just make you a little safer and do a little more damage going into the end, and then you're just going to go back to turbo spamming Liquidation until you win. And Tauros is going to do, again, it's going to do most of the work for you by spamming close combat at you. It's going to debuff its own stats, and it's even going to set up rain for you. Slowbro can one-shot this raid if you have a opponent that is weak to Psychic, just like we did in the footage. You're going to use Iron Defense once, Nasty Plot 3 times, and then you can go ahead and use Stored Power. If you do have room before the shield up, then you can use an attack cheer just to make sure. But if it's not resisted damage, then after the first stored power, Tauros is going to clean you, so you're just going to go ahead and set up again. You do have the Shell Bell that's going to get you to full health after that big damage, but you do have Slack Off just in case you need it during the second setup. But anyways, the second setup's going to be the same: 1 iron defense, 3 nasty plots. If you need the Slack Off, you can go ahead, but once you have all that, you're going to go ahead and go back to using stored power until the raid is over. It's very unlikely that you'll have to terrestrialize, but when you do terrestrialize, just make sure you're already set up, and it should be a very easy win. Smash that like button and subscribe.